Welcome to the ODDSBREAKER'S #1 place for shared sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 42 of 2020. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow us on Twitter at The ODDSBREAKERS. Follow us on social media /The ODDSBREAKERS. This episode is being brought to you by Kelly in Vegas Proxy Service. If you are looking into getting into these massive $1 million football contests run in Las Vegas, you don't even have to live there. You can enter and win your chance at millions of dollars just by using Kelly and her service to take care of your entries every single week. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because there's some key things happening this year that's going to make you want to sign up. If you'd like to support the ODDSBREAKERS podcast and our website, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and click shop and become a member for $17.99 a month. You can get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. If nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a Free Picks newsletter subscriber. I got to tell you, we have a great show for you today. David Bearman from ESPN is back. The deputy editor of sports betting is back to go over our NFL lines every single game of week 1. How about that? I'm so excited for David to come back on. But first, we're going to talk a little bit more about these football contests. If you don't already know, you can make 5 plays against the spread. The spreads are locked. They lock on Tuesday and Wednesday, depending if you're doing the Westgate Super Contest that's been around a long time. Last year's winner, I believe, was over $1.5 million. If you do it that way, it's on Wednesday. And if you go to the circa $1 million sports contest, the entry fee is less. It's $1,000. Westgate's is $1,500. And I believe you might be able to put your picks in on Tuesday. I've been doing the Westgate myself over the last couple years. But the circa is something special this year. And I've been looking forward to doing this because of such a terrible 2020. You know, having sports back in our lives gives us some hope. It gives us stuff to do. You're not twiddling your fingers all day. You're back to normal. You're having some fun. You're feeling good. You know, a little sense of normalcy is what we all need. And I'm really happy that the NFL and some college football are making attempts to bring that back to us in these crazy, unprecedented times. And I believe they're doing it safely too. And we've talked enough about that. But back to the contests. You know, Kelly, she will put your picks in through her business and her service called Kelly in Vegas Proxy Service. You can find her on Twitter at KIV Proxy Service or her main Twitter account, Kelly in Vegas. And you can contact her through the website, kellyinvegas.com, to get more information. But the huge thing about this year, especially with the circa, is that they have a guaranteed $3 million that they are paying out. Guaranteed. Quarterly prizes of $250,000. Payments for 1 through 50th place. All right? There are only 311 entrants so far. 311. The first NFL game is only 22 days away. This means that if they don't get 3,000 people signing up at $1,000 a pop, you are going to have a positive expected value in this contest. They are paying out more than people are putting in if they don't get to that number. And I'll tell you right now, the number was a hell of a lot higher for both of these contests before, when 22 days in. It was more like I believe in the thousands. Okay? So this means that your chances greatly go up competing against less people to win those prizes. Even if you start out bad, you can compete for quarterly prizes, the ones that are done monthly, right? That's how huge this contest is. It's going to be even better this year because, especially if you have less people in it, there's going to be more of a piece of a pie. And this doesn't even count who they have to pay to run this thing at Circa. Circa's doing a great job over there. The Westgate's just going to get plenty of people in just based upon their reputation. It's the number one football contest in the world. There's going to be people in it. So, as far as the Westgate's concerned, I'm not too worried about them. I might even personally do both. But either way, I'm very excited about this, and Kelly runs a fantastic business. She's astute. She's on time. The people that put in your picks that work for her are on time. It's just a fantastic job that she does, and she gives you more time to get in those picks than other proxy services. So make sure you check out Kelly in Vegas and tell her the Odds Breakers sent you, and hopefully this will be your year to turn 2020 around. Woo! A lot of craziness coming about baseball. Fernando Tatis Jr. hit a grand slam home run, right? And they were just creaming. I think it was the Rockies. No, I think it was the Rangers. Anyways, he got a lot of shit for that. The next pitcher threw behind him because he hit a grand slam off a 3-0 count, right? And everyone's like, the baseball purists, you shouldn't be doing that. That you already had the team down. What was it, like 10-2 or something like that? Well, in my opinion, getting mad at somebody for hitting a grand slam because their stinking pitcher threw 3 balls is like getting mad at a child that's blowing his class away at push-ups by doing 20 extra ones more than the next kid can do in the class.
Unreal.
Why the hell would you get mad at somebody when they're facing amazing pitchers throughout the year? Clayton Kershaw, guys like Max Scherzer, Shane Bieber, right? I mean, some of these pitchers are just throw absolute filth at you, and you get the one opportunity to pad your stats, which baseball is a stats-driven game, and they're going to come down at you for hitting a grand slam when you're already beating a team because the pitcher sucks.
Unreal.
That is absolute dog shit. These stupid baseball purist rules literally need to go, and they're part of the reason why the sport has been suffering so much via TV ratings. Baseball needs to get rid of all this old, unwritten rule garbage and let the players go out and do what they do and have some fun. All right, well, we have bigger fish to fry anyways. Want to make a quick announcement here. I am working on a show, a TV, well, it's going to be via YouTube, via Twitch, sports betting show coming to you on Saturday mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. Going to be about a half hour, and I have a handicapper, a well-known one, that's going to be doing it with me. Most likely, I'm not going to announce anything yet, but I'm working on that. Got a lot of software already down. Every single Saturday, we're going to be covering some extra lines for people, going over some sharp movements, going over some leans, and maybe even coming up with some plays when we kind of trade thoughts back and forth of stuff that we might have missed or stuff that we actually have seen and should have factored in more. So I'm really excited for that. There's going to be more information coming from that. We're in the testing stage right now. So be aware that the Odds Breakers are now expanding into a actual video show. Going to possibly happen on Sundays as well. Going to kind of start baby stepping into the college football season first. All right, and without further ado, let's bring on our guest, ESPN's David Bearman. And now I'm very happy to bring back a very important man in the media of sports betting here on the ODDSBREAKER'S show. He is the deputy editor of sports betting at ESPN. Very happy to introduce Mr. David Bearman from ESPN.com. You can follow him on Twitter at DBearmanESPN. David, look, since we talked a month ago, looks like football has kind of been a little up and down, especially when it comes to college here. But hey, man, we have some NFL lines. They're out. How you feeling?
Well, good. Thanks for having me on. That was a heck of an introduction. I'm not sure my mother or my wife have said that many good things about me. So thanks for having me on.
I tend to brown nose a little bit.
No, it was good. It was very good. You used words like important and all sorts of things. No, it's been a weird couple of weeks, and it's, I think, only going to continue to be weirder until they actually run out and kick the football off the tee to start somewhere across this country, whether it's Texans Chiefs on a Thursday night from Kansas City in front of piped-in crowd noise, or whether it's going to be an FCS or an FBS game. You know, conferences are in, conferences are out, conferences are being sued. So who knows what's going to happen, but I think we're all looking forward to at least seeing some sort of semblance of football. And, you know, one day you hear that the Big Ten's not playing, and the next day you hear Georgia is going to have 20% of its stadium open, and you're like, they're in the same country? What's going on?
It's almost like they're really trying to stick it to the Big Ten. Like it's like kick them when they're down, twist the dagger, you know, put them completely out of any talks against the SEC. You know, just trying to bury them a little bit, and that's almost kind of like, what do you do? As a Big Ten fan, it's really tough to look at, and
That is tough.
It's a little embarrassing too. Teams talking about having actual fans 22%. Then you look, NASCAR's already done it. You know, they've already had some fans. You know, it's just, I think we're starting to kind of come out of this thing, and one somebody's going a different direction than the other, and they're all fighting over it. And so I just don't know why. Some of the Justin Fields put on that huge petition, and last time I checked, it was like 260-some thousand petition, people signed. But that doesn't matter because the university is the university. They're the powers that be. You know, they don't answer to anybody really. Go ahead.
And I do think that's been the biggest issue overall. And I heard Mac Brown earlier on the new Keyshawn, Jay, Will, and Zubin show this morning, the old Mike and Mike, and he was saying that the biggest issue, and I completely agree with him, is the lack of oversight in terms of as a sport, there is nobody overseeing the whole thing. It's this conference is out for their own, that conference is out for their own. Some are checking with the players, some are not. And you're right, like the players can sue, petition, parents can complain. At the end of the day, who's making the call? Like the SEC may disagree, but the Big Ten might, and it's kind of a all over the map type thing that nobody really took control over, and I think that's why it's different than the NBA bubble, whatever Major League Baseball is trying to do, which is still playing, and what the NFL might have coming forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like I didn't know how little the NCAA oversaw football. You know. It really showed its head there. I was shocked. They're not even involved in any of the playoffs. I thought they had something there, and I don't really care too much. I mostly care about numbers. But just looking at it, it's like if a couple of the Big Ten teams want to leave the Big Ten and start a conference, they can do it. Yeah, it's just that easy. I didn't know that.
There's a lot of money at stake, and which is why you see Nebraska head coach Scott Frost screaming from the top of the mountain that I don't give a crap that the Big Ten says we're going to play football. And the very next day, the Big Ten commissioner says, if you want to play football, you'll be leaving the conference, and that's worth about $40 million a year. And all of a sudden, Nebraska was quiet, and they haven't been heard from since. So you can technically leave, but you're giving up money that is pretty much going to run your athletic department at the university. So before Scott Frost actually is going to leave the Big Ten, I'm sure that the president of Nebraska, the athletic director at Nebraska, might have something to say about the $40 million a year that they're leaving on the table, not to mention the penalty that you'd have to pay for leaving anyway. And, you know, you've seen over the last 10 years that there's been a lot of, conference realignment, and all that is you can leave whenever you want. You got to pay the penalties what they are. But yeah, you could see something like that happen again. I just don't see people leaving the Big Ten just because there's so much money at stake. At one point, I thought maybe Nebraska could still play, but when Grandpa comes out and says, if you play, you're leaving the conference, you don't leave the conference. So
I 100% agree. They would have to bring people with them, or if they're going to try to become a Notre Dame, they don't quite have that fan base. Don't get me wrong. They do have a decent national fan base. I see them all over the place, but nothing like Notre Dame. And it would screw them over for the next 5, 6, 7 years of just negative revenues there. That is just not something they're prepared to do. They would need some serious backing of like an Ohio State, Michigan, which rumors they're trying to play. Iowa was the other school that I heard that voted against. But they would seriously need some pressure from that. And I'm not even sure what the boosters are doing, for some of these schools either. I
think it depends on where you're at. As far as Nebraska's and Notre Dame's concerned, Notre Dame is doing the opposite. They're going into a conference for the year because they can't do it alone. When you lose half of your schedule because other conferences and other teams aren't playing, they're forced into the ACC on a one-year basis. But yeah, Nebraska doesn't, and they were allowed to do that because they didn't have a conference. As far as Nebraska is concerned, they're not leaving the Big Ten. The only hope those schools has is that the Big Ten reverses its decision. But at the end of the day, like, the Big Ten is taking the word of medical professionals who are saying it's not safe to play, and I totally respect that. Other conferences are in a wait-and-see approach when it comes to those same medical professionals, that what you're hearing on August 15th might not be the same that you hear on September 10th, so they're waiting. But don't be surprised if those medical professionals say the same thing on September 10th and the other conferences pull the plug. Or maybe they don't. The SEC just announced their entire new schedule the other day. So, but a week earlier, the Big Ten did the same thing. So we'll see what happens.
Exactly. I know the Duke came out and said, their medical professionals came out and said it could be safe. So we'll see if they change their tune too.
It is amazing how the medical professionals change depending on what part of the country you live in.
Yeah, that's very true too. I know, it's just amazing here. Well, yeah, I mean, whatever happens here, if people get COVID and the rest of the team gets it, it's going to be like what happened to St. Louis Cardinals and a little bit with the Marlins and Philly. There's going to be some suspended games, and I wonder how long those will go. And that's going to be frustrating, especially if it happens in the NFL. And I almost have to say when it happens. I don't even think I could say if, because they're testing people. Some of these teams weren't showing symptoms and got tested and got told that they had it. And they would have played with it. Is that bad or is that good? That's always a question that we're never going to completely know. If obviously you spread it to somebody that's got medical conditions, it's horrible. So it's just so involved, and it's all experimental from here on out, David. Really,
we just don't. Yeah, you just don't know what's going to happen. And sure, the conferences like the SEC and ACC and Big 12 are putting in a different type of flexible schedule to allow for things like happened to the Marlins and the Cardinals. But I think in some respects they may be sorely underestimating what will happen. Like, the Cardinals didn't just not play for a week. They didn't play for about 15 days. The Marlins not only didn't play for about 12 days, but then when they were able to play, the squad they put together, even though they won, was no different than a AAA, AA team of cast-offs, because half their team was quarantined. So what do you do if the Florida-Georgia game has to get postponed because half of Florida's team has COVID? It's not like they can just play the next week. Half the team is going to be in quarantine. So it is good that they're having flexible schedules. I just don't think there's going to be enough flexibility if a St. Louis Cardinals or Florida Marlins, I call them Florida Marlins, that's what they were when I was there, but the Miami Marlins scenario happens. I don't know if a bye week or pushing a game back a week is really going to... The trickle-down effect of rescheduling college football is infinitely harder than what Major League Baseball is doing. So the Marlins didn't play for about 10 days, and they have 5 scheduled doubleheaders coming up in September. Right. Hard, but doable. You're not playing doubleheaders in football. You're not playing 2 7-inning doubleheaders. You're not doing 2 40-minute games. You're not going to do that in football. So I don't know where they're going to make up these games should a team miss 3 weeks, because that's what could happen if you lose half your team. You could miss 3 weeks.
Absolutely. And in my opinion, it should go past February. I mean, just the timing allowed for this, multiple teams getting it at different times. If every team got the same week, it'd be like they're off for 2 weeks and then boom, they have some sort of antibodies or cellular memory, but that's just not going to happen. It can't happen. Football season can't end at the beginning of December the way it's set up, in my opinion. And neither can the NFL in late December coming into the playoffs in January. That's the only way. Unless they went to some sort of model where you necessarily kept every single person in a bubble and didn't necessarily even test unless they're sick. I just don't know, and keep them away from anybody that has medical conditions. It's just way too much for me to think about, man. And I guess what the Big Ten is saying, though, is that they're not getting a chance. These kids had hopes and dreams. Same with the Pac-12. And they banked a lot on this season, and it probably frustrates them a lot to see other conferences almost kind of make fun of them. So here's the sad thing about it, David. You have the Big Ten, and I hate to say it, but the people that made those decisions, they might. How do you not root for chaos in all the conferences that actually made the decision to play? Because if they play and they play with no problems, oh my God, then it's going to come down really bad on them, right?
And I see that, but at the same time, chaos also means lots of people getting a virus nobody wants to get. So
right.
We'll see what happens. It's just astounding that it's so different depending on where you're at, what college it is, and what's conference. And I mean that's what this country is as well, depending on where you live and what political frame mind you're in, or what side of the aisle the governor's on. So
yep, absolutely. It's all about that as well. But we beat this one to death. So let's get into some NFL, sure. David. So the season's here, man. I have a way that I kind of approach handicapping NFL games. How do you approach an NFL card, should I say?
Sure. If it's a normal, pre-COVID, no nonsense type thing, right. I am someone who has learned that I will hop on things Monday morning if something jumps out to me. I try to evaluate what every line should be before the lines come out on Sunday night. And I know that they move a lot. That's when the sharps jump in there. So I'm not saying a full card, but I'll probably pick off one or two Sunday night or Monday morning that I really think are going to move in my, in the favor that I would want to take them. Against me. So I'll do that, and then I'll sit back and evaluate what's going on with the in the camps, what's going on the field with the practices, and then I'll still do the same. I'll make some adjustments based on the week before, and I'm ultimately looking for value. And I mean, it sounds obvious, but some people just say, Team A is better than Team B. Let's take Team A. I'm looking, I play through the numbers. Obviously, 3 and 7 are key numbers, and you look to make sure that it falls on the right side, never laying 3.5 and never laying 7.5, but buying down and this and that. But what I ultimately like to do with my NFL card is finding. I'm not betting all 16 games. To me, that is, you can do that at a pool, and that's fine, and see if you can get the most for the weekly you win. But I'm looking to find the value in the top 5 games that I have, sort of like we talked about the Super Contest. And once I find 5 games I really, really like, I usually round robin parlay them together. That's my style to go ahead and say, well, if I am doing this and I'm trying to succeed at this, and that is kind of what I do for a living, I should be able to go 3 and 2 most of the time, more than I would go 2 and 3. And if you're taking your 5 best games, not your first, your 7th, and your 10th, then ultimately, if you're handicapping this the right way, and you've been in super contests, that you're supposed to go 4 and 1 to have a shot at cashing in those contests. That if you're going 3 and 2 or better, then maximizing your profit by combining some parlays together, to me, maximize the value. And then I'll take other solo games as they see fit. And ultimately, you're like, oh, why didn't I have that in the parlay instead of that one? And I picked my 7th game was better than my 4th. But, that's if it was easy, we'd all be millionaires. But right. I ultimately try to find the best cream of the crop games that I like, and then maximize it by rolling them together in round robin parlays. And if you go 3 and 2, you're making a little bit money. And if you're really good and have that 4 in 1 week, you're exponentially adding to what your stack is. And obviously you're trying to avoid the 2 and 3 or 1 and 4, but there's too many 2 and 3s or 1 and 4s. You really shouldn't be doing it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to maximize value, but you also hit on some points in our last podcast. We had that, you try to hit the lines early, early as possible. Try to find value. Obviously, if you're a limit better, you have to wait a little bit longer till Wednesday or so. But that's the important concepts here. And sometimes buying back is worth it. If you ever, the price between a 3 and a 3.5 is sold for 25 cents. It's a lot, and so that stuff all factors in. If you can just get a line early at 2.5 and it gets overbet to 3.5, buy that sucker back, because 9% of the time, you're going to double up on that, and you're only paying, your juice on that. So only paying 4.55%. So that's just how to go through the numbers on that. And we have a sports betting article on our website, theoddsbreakers.com, that explains everything about that. So if you're new to this, please check that out. Also, speaking of the Super Contest, make sure you check out Kelly Stewart in Vegas at Kelly in Vegas. She is the best proxy around, and she'll be able to set you up for your Super Contest or Circa Sports Contest winners. So going into home field advantage, David, man, I thought about this a lot because I read an article, and it was about baseball, and I think it was actually on ESPN. Home teams were only winning at 50.5% as of, I think it was Saturday or something. And that kind of blew my mind a little bit. That would only make it worth 2 cents when it was normally worth about 18 to 20 cents in baseball at 54%. So, I was a little scared there. The way I'm going to look at the NFL, and I'll go first on this if that's okay.
Sure.
I'm going to go with 2 points and to start off. And this is obviously can be adjusted when we start seeing some things. But I got to give 1 point still for the travel, for the other teams still traveling. 1 point for the familiarity of the home team that's played in that stadium, the ins and outs, the way the wind gusts, that types of situations, what they're ready for. Even though, it's a new year, there's still veterans there that's been through it, the coaches and all that. And if there's going to be a stadium at 22% like Kansas City, I'm going to reserve the right to add a half point back. So it would be 2.5 in that situation, because there's still going to be a little bit of an intimidation factor. But I can't give it the full 2.8, and some people just say 3. What are your thoughts on home field?
I think that's fair what you said. 2 points seems logical. I've had a lot of these conversations with bookmakers starting way back when the schedule came out and the first NFL lines were released back in April or May, whenever it was, that how much would home field factor into setting the lines back then. And if you take a close look at what was released way back in April and what the lines are now, you'll definitely see some lines have come down in places like New Orleans and Kansas City and places that are known to have good home field advantage, that some of those numbers are not getting the 3.5 that you might give somebody in the Superdome or at Arrowhead. And obviously Seattle's on the road, so it wouldn't be them, not Kingdom, but safe, whatever Seattle's called.
Green Bay, all that.
Yeah, those teams that have the 12th man and have ferocious home crowds. But I do think it is one of the more important handicapping questions that we will see in our time, is how to judge either impact or non-impact of home field. And I do think your 2 points for familiarity and travel on the other side is valid. And one thing that I've read and discussed, and I'll throw it out there right now, that we're just before this show, and I don't know if it was because we were going to be talking about this or it just happened to be in my head, I reached out to one of our guys, and we're actually going to produce a piece the week leading into the NFL season about what the impact's going to be for the books and for the bettor. So we're going to have someone write that piece up. So stay tuned for that, because that'll be a full-on interview with bookmakers and bettors alike and how they're approaching it, just like you and I are discussing. But I would say that one thing that is a reason to go 2 points instead of 3 is, I think, the third point, and everyone's third point is different. Sometimes it's 4 and sometimes it's a half, is the impact that the crowd has not on the players, but on the referees. And we've all talked about refereeing in the NFL, it not being an exact science, and some blown calls, and what instant replay is and what it isn't, and how it's changed and how it's not. Let's not fool ourselves. A 70,000 seat stadium with screaming fans absolutely impacts the instant, in the moment flag throwing that the referee has to do. It just does. There's no scientific proof of that, but there is a case that you can see that home teams do get the benefit of the call more times than not on a, long downfield pass that could or could not be pass interference, which is everybody's least favorite topic when it comes to refereeing or other, where you're spotting the ball, other things that, fans, loud crowd noise will affect referees. And it is shown that home teams do get the benefit of calls more than other teams, depending on where it is. And how do you judge how much that's worth? It depends on the team and the player in the stadium. Like in the NBA, we always know that the stars get the whistle blows for them. And, crowded and busy arenas can help weigh that one way or another with the crowd noise, with the in-game entertainment and stuff. And Adam Schefter tweeted out earlier today that they're looking to do piped-in crowd noise like they're doing in Orlando for the NBA games. How much does that factor in? I don't think fake crowd noise is one thing that we should be worried about, but it's not like you're going to just be hearing someone yell Omaha, Omaha, Omaha all day. And they kind of, like, I have been on both sides of it where I've been to really, really packed, sold out, ear-splitting games where, like, you can't hear yourself afterwards. And with all due respect to the XFL, which I loved going to, I went to a game this year and there was nobody there in New York, and you could hear every single call being made on the field. So there is an impact there with the crowd noise, especially with the familiarity of the players on the field and being able to hear things and not being hear things. I do think some of the lines have it baked in now as opposed to before, but on a week-to-week basis, it's probably just going to depend on where you're at and what the team is. I think a more veteran team will be able to function better without crowd noise than a team that's made up of a lot of youngsters who are used to playing. Like, let's say I'll use the Dolphins for an example, who just drafted 2 players from the SEC and one of their offensive linemen and one of their cornerbacks that played at Auburn and Georgia respectively. They're used to packed, screaming noise crowds. So if you're an offensive lineman playing for the Dolphins and you played in 40 games in Athens, and now you're sitting in a stadium with no noise and you're a rookie, that might be a little jarring. So it might impact the younger teams a little bit more, and that's one thing I'm going to look at. And I think you also, and I know this is a little bit off topic as you're talking about home field, you have to judge how much practice these teams have had, and not as much as they've had in the past. So I think in general, the teams that are well established with a veteran quarterback and who have been around the longest will have some distinct advantages no matter what the environment is, whether they're playing at home, neutral site, in a bubble, out of a bubble, home crowd, no home crowd. If you're a veteran player in the NFL, like a Russell Wilson, you've been with the same coach and the same coordinators and same stadium, you're going to have an easier time adjusting to this than if you're a team made up of rookies and a new quarterback in a city you've never played for with teammates you've never played for.
100%. And that's true. I wonder how much they have to rely on the crowd and balanced with their experience just playing there. And that's a great point. And great point about the officials. What's funny about the officials is the reason that you can't quantify it is because they'll make a makeup call sometimes, and it's not something we like to talk about, but you know what happens. They'll call something on the other side. Giving them a 10-yard holding penalty on 4th and 1 when there is going to be at least a field goal, possibly a touchdown, and it causes a punt is worth a lot more than that 15-yard personal foul in the kickoff, right?
Sure.
And so that's sometimes makeup calls. It's like that's not real balance. There has to be value that they put on these things, and that's when they're scared to throw it or scared to not throw the flag when all those fans are yelling at them. So great point there. I don't know how that's going to be quantified. Maybe it takes home field down slightly a little bit more, but all exciting stuff to see. And I can't wait to see that article that you guys write about it, David. And check that out at ESPN. Check out David's Twitter at DBearman ESPN, my man. Well, you ready to get in some of these games then?
Sure. I made a joke to a buddy this morning that I'm going to do a podcast and talk about week 1 games, as crazy as that sounds.
It is crazy, but the lines are out now in Vegas. They are already starting to get hit. We have to be early, man, because that's what we preach. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. And it's going to be from a high level here. We don't need to spend too much time per game. Just kind of browse through it. But it's nice to get that out there. If people, there's going to be some serious line moves from what we see. There's already been some line moves, and I'll point a couple of those out. But just remember this, that what you hear today is not going to be the same the first 2 weeks of September here when the actual games are going to happen. So maybe there's some better chances for some middles when this stuff comes out. But we'll start out right now at the top here. Houston at Kansas City here. Kansas City is a 9.5-point favorite at home against Houston. The total of this is at 54.5. My power ratings have Kansas City with a 2-point home field advantage, and I didn't do 2.5 yet. I just did 2. Kansas City minus 10, right? So 9.5 to 10 is not a play for me. Pretty much right on the spread here. I do expect the public to probably come in at Kansas City a little bit later. But the thing that I remember mostly about this is when Houston completely crapped the bed when they were up by, 24 points after the first quarter of their playoff matchup last year. You wonder how much that affects them mentally and how they kind of try to want to come in there. Or is it just going to be one of those facts where Bill O'Brien is completely outmatched and outcoached and Kansas City covers this spread? Did you look at this one?
Yeah, looking at that one, obviously it's the first game. You're going to want to have it, but this is one of the ones I mentioned earlier that I think it opened closer to 11.5, which blew our mind when it first was announced how big it was going to be for what is expected to be the first matchup, primetime matchup of the year, which usually is last year was a 3-point game between Chicago and Green Bay, and most years involving whether it's the Eagles or the Patriots, etc. You have a lot closer than a non-divisional 10 at the time 11-point spread. So it has moved a little bit, and I do suspect that is because of the lack of home field you're going to have at Kansas City, as well as people wanting to grab the double digits, whether it's 9.5 or 10. I look at this matchup, and you have one team that is Super Bowl champs. It's going to be ring night. It's going to be banner night. You know what impact that has had in the past on the Patriots and Eagles and others who won Super Bowls are getting that advantage to begin with, even though there's no one there to raise the banner and give the rings to. But they've had a pretty good, solid offseason, re-signing players like Pat Mahomes and others where you see the continuity growing with Kansas City. It's not like, we won a Super Bowl, let's relax and, whatever happens. They are pushing forward to be the next New England Patriots dynasty. And on the flip side, there are a lot of people trying to figure out what the heck Bill O'Brien is doing to begin with, as he's traded multiple players, including a franchise player like Hopkins. And, every trade it seems that O'Brien made, whether it's overpaying for Tunsil or giving away Hopkins for not enough, they've had a rocky offseason, and I don't think the Houston Texans are going to be a playoff contending team, albeit there's a extra playoff spot this year. So in this one, I would lean Kansas City. I do think 9.5 and 10 is a little too much. So should you be looking at an entire board, this wouldn't make my top 5 or top half picks, whether it be talking about, half the 8 games or 8 of the 16 or not. But in a pull position where you have to pick a side, I would lean laying, especially if you can get it at 9.5 and the Caesars has it currently at 10. It is something that I would take the favorite in this one and play off the emotion of being the Super Bowl champs with a solid, potentially repeat situation versus a Texans team that it's probably in your wheelhouse of being, I believe you said 7.5, 8 points. So it's a little high for that, but I just don't trust the Texans nor will I like anything they have, and you just don't know what their makeup is going to be.
Yeah, and with the home field, I do have it at about exactly the spread. So yeah, it 100% agree. And you that's a lot of breakdown, man. You actually hit that pretty hard. But no, I'll lean Kansas City, just like you said right there. That's plenty. But the next game, David, I'm gonna let you start with this one because it is your Miami Dolphins, my man, going into a very different looking New England Patriots team. This thing I saw at 7.5, and it's down to 6.5 now. And what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, and I'll bias, taking a side. I don't have any, obviously a huge Dolphins fan, and I take that as well as you should, betting 101, take your heart and bias aside. That's a game that when it first was released, I projected to be at about 7.5, 8 to be the opening spread is where I would have had it. Obviously, the Patriots situation has changed with no Brady, and they have brought in Cam, who don't know what Cam you're going to get. He's not Tom Brady, but at the same time, I think that's a fair number that you're getting. You have to lay less than a touchdown, so I think that is fair, and it makes it very interesting. I would obviously, if you take the Dolphins, I would buy it to 7 just because you don't want to leave that hook out there, and that might change before the game. It's a pass for me right now because you don't know who the Dolphins quarterback's going to be. If it is Fitzpatrick, let's just go there because I don't think Tua starts week 1 anyway. It wouldn't be the right move to throw him in there, especially at New England. I would lean Miami because Fitzpatrick not only has beaten the Patriots before and beat them last year to cost them a first-round bye and the year before. The Dolphins have proven that they can beat New England, and Fitzpatrick has beaten them multiple times. Solid veteran. If the team they come up with that opening day is a team that can get on the field and play well, this is not the Patriots of old. They're missing a whole bunch of players. I would probably take the touchdown. But if they're throwing a whole bunch of rookies out there, last year they lost by more than 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. I believe it was how many touchdowns 49 points is. That is what happened
7.
week 1. Yes, week 1 to Lamar Jackson in Baltimore last year. So those things can happen to a young team, but Lamar Jackson's not suiting up for New England, and you would hope the Dolphins in year 2 would be a little bit more. So I would lean Miami, depending on who the quarterback is. But overall, it would be a pass currently. Just too much information. Well, you don't know.
Being that you're not allowed to make a homer pick, obviously, especially when it's the first week of the NFL here, I'll do it for you. I have New England minus 4.5 is my number.
There you go.
And so going from 6.5 to 4.5 is it constitutes a play. It passes through the 10-cent juice. It's more than 2.4% probability percentage change here. You have to be right on 52.4% of your bets at a minus 110. So here's the thing here. Miami, they beat New England at the end of the year. It was at home, but it was also kind of like a statement to go into to the next year, in my opinion. The Patriots tried that game. They had to try because they lost home field advantage that game.
Yep.
And it was huge. When I remember when it was absolutely huge. And obviously Tom Brady, it looked like he was kind of checking out. But now you have them without 8 to 10 key players, including Tom Brady, including Donta Hightower, just huge players for this team. Their best person on offense and their best person on defense here. What I don't like is Fitzmagic as a starter. I like him coming in and waiting until the injured first guy comes back. But once he is actually announced as a starter is when he makes terrible decisions. It's almost like, it's just weird. It's just, if Fitzmagic is ever your backup, just don't ever tell him that the starter's not coming back and he'll be great. What are those weird situations here? But I 100% agree with you that you should get the 7 if you can, and you can probably shop that around. And maybe even if you wait on it, you'll find some New England money. But the Dolphins signed a lot of players in free agency here, and these are some experienced guys. Fitzmagic is obviously very experienced. They're going to be getting a couple wide receivers back as well. Devontae Parker was like the second best fantasy receiver since week 7, if you count just week 7 and up. I like Miami to cover this, and I don't love it, but I'll take 1 star on it, my man. So.
Yeah, if you're going to take a side now, that's the side I would lean on because you don't really know what's going to happen with the Patriots and all the players that are missing. I just worry about who will be that week 1 starter for the Dolphins and how many rookies are in that lineup. But keep in mind, Flores knows the Patriots and he knows Belichick, and it showed in the games they played last year that he knows that team. So it'll be interesting. I'm cautiously optimistic on the Dolphins this year to be a 6 or 7 win team, not make the playoffs, but to grow a little bit and get Tua in there mid-season and see what he can do.
All right. Well, Cleveland versus Baltimore is next. Yesterday I was at Baltimore minus 8.5. Total on this was 48.5. And I have it Baltimore minus 10. I mean, there's nothing between 10 and 7, right? 7.5 to 9.5 is it's kind of dead world, The number started heading away from 10, but I guess if it goes too much farther, I would take a shot. But it's Harbaugh versus a new coach, man. I can't really put faith in a new coach when Harbaugh's coming in and starting the season. And Lamar Jackson's going to be very motivated this game after the way they went, or in the number 1 seed coming out of the playoffs. So I'm going to put a lean to Baltimore. What are your thoughts?
I look at this game one of 2 ways, and depending on which one of your angles actually comes through is the way to take on this one. Is Yeah, Lamar Jackson's going to be motivated. You saw what they did week 1 last year to the Dolphins, who had a new coach, just like the Browns have. If you look at pure talent alone, the Ravens are a Super Bowl contending team who will be favored in all 16 games this season, most likely. And they're a team that legitimately could win the Super Bowl when the Browns are not. You also flip it around onto the other side that the Browns, who I will go on record as saying I have heavily faded the Browns for the last couple of years during their, the Browns are the new team. They're going to make the wild card. They're back. All those wild card Brown lovers, I immediately take the under win totals every year on the Browns. It's paying, future college funds for my kid and fade them throughout the season. One of those times I faded them last year is the time they went in and absolutely kicked the crap out of the Ravens, which nobody saw coming. It was one of the few Ravens losses last year, but the Browns did beat them. And that Browns team, albeit with a new coach and some new pieces, are getting 8.5 points week 1 to go out there and play a Ravens team that was one of the few who beat the Ravens last year and stopped Lamar Jackson and got him out of his rhythm. That being said, it's hard-pressed to bet against the Ravens, so my lean would still be with yours on Baltimore week 1 coming out there and proving it. But I can understand why someone would want the Browns as they did beat them last year. Now, game plans might be different because it's a new coach, but they do have talent on that team, and if you can get a coach, and in this case, you got a guy who knew how to do it in Minnesota, and Minnesota's not been a team that's been in disarray or anything like the Browns have gone through. So if he can get the same job done there, I think Cleveland eventually gets to that next level. I just don't know if it'll be week 1.
All right. Well, I can kind of buy into what you're saying there. There could have been a chance Baltimore was just not taking them seriously, and Cleveland was taking them very seriously, kind of like a letdown or look ahead. And that kind of thing happens there. But unless this spread goes back to closer to 7.5 or 7, I'm probably going to sit back and just enjoy it. The next game we have is the New York Jets versus the Buffalo Bills. As of yesterday, Bills are favored by 6 points. The total in this game is 39.5. What are your thoughts on this one?
I like the Bills in this one. The Jets are still, and it's not a biased opinion, it's based on fact and stats, they're just still garbage. They're not a good team. They're not very talented. Obviously, I don't like their head coach. And I think the Bills are the exact opposite. The Bills would be my pick to contend, obviously, with the Patriots this year to potentially win the division. And if it's not going to be New England, I do think it'll be Buffalo. Playoff team from last year. They got a solid quarterback, a really good defense. They've beaten the Jets in this spot many times in the past. And I would lay the 6 here. One of the plays I would look at the over-under. I know it's sitting at 39, and that seems kind of low. And I think that game would go over depending on who laces up for both teams. But I just think you have an advantage at quarterback that's bigger than people want to give Jared Allen versus Sam Darnold credit for. I think or Kyle Allen, sorry. I think there is a much bigger disparity there than people think there are. He could easily be the class of the division when it comes to the quarterbacks for now. Obviously, 2 is to come, and you see what Cam can do. I actually like the Bills, and I think I would lay it here.
So I have it as a power rated exactly on the number. I also have it -6 just based on pure power ratings. But that doesn't mean that I do like what you're saying, that they always handle this team. Both teams did lose a little bit on defense. Buffalo might have picked up a little bit, recapped a little bit more. Buffalo lost their best sack guys last year. I'm a little concerned about that. But what you said about the total, I'm going to lean with you on that one. Over 39.5 possibly, because the fact that these teams did lose some defense makes me wonder if that total could be a little bit too low, right? So
and there was a stat last year. I'd have to go look it up, but one of the plays, I want to say these two teams played each other in the opener last year. And one of the plays that I jumped on really, really early was the over, which was, I believe, 37.5. I'd have to go look up what my numbers told me. That was one of my 5 plays for the week that I thought was very, very, very the line didn't add up. And it did go over the total. I just don't remember what it was. I'd have to look up the stat. The 39 does seem kind of low for what I expect to be. I didn't even mention the fact that they got Stephon Diggs and Allen can throw the digs, and I think that is something that I would watch the Bills this year. I mean, obviously the Chiefs and the Ravens are the class of the division. You can never count the Patriots out, although they're missing a lot of pieces. And you have other teams that can contend, like Tennessee and others. But I would keep an eye on Buffalo this year. I think, surprisingly, they could win 10, 11 games.
Well, I do have Buffalo win the division at plus 175. And that sucker is gone. So,
yeah, it's gone. Good bet there.
So hopefully that comes out in fruition anyway. Next game, Las Vegas Raiders minus 1.5 as a road favorite to Carolina as a home dog. Total on this game is 47. I'll start with this one. My number is the Raiders minus 1, so nothing on that. But I want to look at the total here. Both teams are pretty bad on defense, and when I say pretty bad, I mean really bad. And Matt Rule's coming in, and they actually have an offensive mind, and Joe Brady from LSU there. I'm really excited to see what Carolina becomes, but the fact that they have a new quarterback without preseason games, kind of the points of what you talked about, makes Carolina look like a fade to me. Sharp money is actually on the Raiders here, and if you're getting it under 3, that's something I got to look at. So right now, even though my number is lower than the 1.5, I'm still going to lean with the Raiders here. What are your thoughts?
See, this is one of the games that you and I, when we discussed the previous conversation about home field advantage, we talk about, you introed the game as you will the next one and say they're a 1 to 1.5 point favorite as a road dog. What road dog might have meant last year might be a lot different this year. And obviously Carolina doesn't have a huge home field advantage. They're not Green Bay. They're not Seattle. They're not Kansas City. But saying last year, I would not want to take a Raiders team going cross country and laying points on the road at Carolina. Mm-hmm. This year I might, because even though you're still traveling cross country, you're not dealing with it being a road game. It's for all intents and purposes a neutral site game that you happen to have flown into. I never like taking West Coast teams in East Coast time zones, so assuming this game is a 10 a.m. start Vegas time, that could be an impact. But again, they can go tomorrow and travel to Carolina if they want. It's not a normal game week since it is week 1. So the East Coast, West Coast, East Coast thing's a little different for the first week of the season when you can go out there whenever you want. The Raiders are the better team. And if you look at their lineup versus the Panthers lineup, I think the Raiders are a better team. You're getting them not so much of a road team favorite type atmosphere because of the lack of home field. And I have no problem laying the 1.5 here in this game because I think while they're not a playoff team, I think Gruden's team will be much better this year, and it could be a 7 or 8 win team that I don't see Carolina being yet under Matt Rule. All
right, man. Well, that's some great points there. It isn't really a true road game when you have all summer to think about it. You're already thinking about the time zone. You're not in a groove. You're not in what am I trying to say? Like the system of going week to week, right? Mm-hmm. You're not used to that yet. When you get into that is where it's hard to get out. Now you're just expecting that. So very good point here. It looks like the Raiders, I'm guessing you're going to see more money coming in on the Raiders, and I'm guessing it's going to go to 3. So if you want to get that early, get them as the road favorite here at minus 1.5. Next game, we have Seattle. They are another road favorite. I just looked a little bit ago. It's at 1.5 now. Yesterday it was at 1 at Atlanta. 49.5 is the total. My number is Seattle minus 3. What are your thoughts on this?
It was one of my initial thought favorite games here, and I'll take the exact same philosophy I just did in the previous game. Seattle, Atlanta, who's the better team? Seattle's a much more talented team. Atlanta has the talent, has never been able to put it together, unfortunately. But on a neutral site, I would take Seattle. It's week 1. Sure, they're going east. The Dome's not going to have anybody in it. No home field there. I don't really see it as a big problem traveling. If this game was played week 7 in Atlanta cross country after Seattle had to play a different game, I might look at it differently. I agree with your assessment that it should be closer to 3, and I'm actually quite surprised it's only 1. That is one that I would probably take now if I was confident that the NFL was going to play. I would jump in there and probably take Seattle or just, this is a 13, 12 win team the last couple of years, wild card division champ, and can Atlanta do that? Sure, they're a few years off of being a Super Bowl team, should have been a Super Bowl winning team, and it's not like they're not talented, but until Atlanta can get off of their Super Bowl hangover, which is now stretching into years 3 or 4, I'm going to go with Seattle.
I'm going to go with Seattle here too, and I'm putting this a 2-star play. All the points that you said completely add up here. I know Atlanta did finish strong last year, but they were kind of desperate. I mean, they were so bad throughout the year that they were trying their asses off at the end when some teams were just kind of looking past them. They lost some serious, a serious face at running back, but they gained one with Gurley. They lost Freeman, who was hurt, and Ito Smith was hurt. They had some bad luck last year, but now they're getting Todd Gurley. And to be honest with you, I don't know what to think about that yet. I mean, the Rams saw some problems with him. Is this guy is going to save everything? They lost some key defensive guys as well, but I think the better play might even be the under. And it's surprising to say this because Atlanta lost so many key guys on defense. But the reason I say this is because Seattle's the kind of team when once they have you, they run the ball. Seattle was 3rd in rushing plays per game last year, and they were 2nd the year before. Let's face it, these offenses are coming out. They're going to be rusty. Usually the first game without practice, they don't have they didn't have a ton of time to play other teams. So, you're going to see a lot of things out of sync, especially when you're a high-flying offense like Atlanta. Could be a lot of 3-and-outs here. I think the under 49.3 is my better play, to be honest with you, David. So don't know if you looked at the total there, but I like them both.
I tend to go under anything in the 49-50 range to begin with. There's not that many NFL games that go over 50 percentage-wise, and with Seattle being more of a ball-controlled team, I kind of agree with you on that one. Although if you're going to look at, I mentioned earlier, teams that are in better position to survive this season because they have veteran leadership, well, both teams have it, Russell Wilson and Matt Ryan. So I do think both teams will be ready, but 49.5 is a lot for week 1.
All right, let's move on then. We got about 20 minutes left. Philadelphia minus 6.5 at Washington. Of course, Philadelphia is going to be favored here, right? 44 is the total. What are your thoughts?
Weird stuff happens when these two teams play each other, and look no further than last year's ridiculous last play of the game, Fumblerooski, that covered the spread for the Eagles. No one knows what to expect with the Washington team. They don't have a name. They're not a very good franchise. And, one of their running backs was just in trouble this morning, as you saw. So this is a pass for me because I'm not in the business of laying 6 points with probably 9 or 10 win Eagles team, but if you're ever going to lay 6 points, it's going to be in a game versus Washington. Again, the home road thing doesn't seem to matter in this rivalry to begin with, not to mention there is no home road when it comes to the crowd. So I think division games is where the home field advantage will be even less than it would be in non-divisional games because they're familiar with the stadiums, they're familiar with playing there, and it's not that far to go from Philly to Washington. So the 6 points, if I were to lean one way, it would obviously be laying with Philly. I'm just not convinced that this team is someone I want to lay almost a touchdown with when you really have no idea. I mean, the one thing Washington has going for it is has a really, really good head coach who has been to a Super Bowl, has surprisingly was let go in Carolina when I thought that was a bad move by them. So wouldn't put it past Ron Rivera to get Washington ready for a divisional game week 1. I just have zero confidence that Washington's going to be worth anything more than 3 or 4 wins.
Yep, and what I wrote here was yuck. Probably that's what I wrote. Yuck. I mean, forget it. I have Philly by 5.75 points, whatever. I could see Philly blowing them out. I could see them somehow screwing this up. There's just so much variance that can happen in this game. And Geis has been released from the Washington football team as well. So he apparently has some pretty bad charges against him. But they do have old Adrian Peterson there. We'll see what happens. Move on to the Bears versus the Lions. My Chicago Bears. Lions are laying 1.5 here at Ford Field. Total is 43.5. So my number, power rating wise, I have the Lions minus 1.25. I am literally a quarter of a point off here. Of course, I'm not that type of homer. I usually fade my teams more than I bet on them. That way, at least if they lose, I win my bet, right? So Mitch has to be desperate, though. I do say that because this game could solidify his course for his NFL career. If he completely blows this, it's Nick Foles, and they're probably not even going to look back. He will be lucky to get a backup job. If he does great this game, he's in the mix here, and he needs to have a new contract next year. So there's a little variance with that. Not playing this game. I think the total's a little high at 43.5. What are your thoughts?
I do think you're right about some desperation at a Mitch, but I also think there's desperation on the other side by the entire organization. Not that has changed anything for the Detroit Lions over time, but Matt Patricia would be a coach that you would immediately put number one in your rankings as being on the proverbial hot seat if you can have one in August. I'm not so worried about Nagy yet. He's only been there a year or two, but I think he's also did well year one, I believe. Yeah, year one was good. Year two was backwards. Patricia's done nothing. Now, I also look at the Lions a little bit differently because people forget because of how the season ended and how poorly the Lions finished, I believe 3-12-1 or something like that, or 4-11-1, is that they were a play or two away from being a 3-1 team early last year.
Right,
they won a game.
Right.
They won a game early. They tied a game early. They should have beaten Green Bay. It was a couple of really, really bad calls going back to the referees and home field advantage and all that.
Oh.
So just horrible calls. Detroit should have won that game, and there was another one that I believe, my memory serves me right, was against Arizona where there was a late pick six that changed the game, and I'm trying to remember which one it was. Detroit was a team that was very close to being a 3 or 4-1 team. You lose those two games, especially with the horrible calls against Green Bay on that Monday night game, and it goes completely the other way, downhill. The season was an absolute train wreck. You lose Stafford, yada, yada, yada. I don't think the Detroit Lions are very good, let me put that out there. I do think they're better than 3 wins from last year, and you're not going to like this. I don't remember if I said this before last time I was on. I currently have one live ticket on the National Football League right now, one live ticket made the day the win totals came out, and that was on under 9.5 Chicago Bears wins.
You're crushing me. You're crushing
stunned
me,
that it was 9.5. And I looked at the schedule and I said, this Bears team is not going to win 10 games. I took the under. It's no, you can't find, just like your Bills 175. You cannot find Chicago Bears 9.5. I took it right off the bat. I'm not a huge Trubisky fan. I'm not a huge Bears fan. These two teams are a lot closer than you think they are. I could be wrong. The Bears could go win 8 games. The Lions could be another 2-14 team. But with Patricia fighting for his job, I'd be surprised if they went out and punted the game. It's a pass for me because it's 1.5 of two teams I think are terrible. Let's call it what it is. Two of the lower teams in the league. The Bears are still a 7-8 win team. They're not a 10-win team. But if I had to lean, I would take the Lions home week 1. Not that home matters, but I just think they can get it done with the Chicago quarterback situation. A little dicey. Chicago has more talent. The health of Stafford obviously matters. It's a pass overall, but kind of my take on the Lions and Bears.
Geez, take it easy, man. Do the Bears play Miami this year? All right, well, we'll look at that later. No, I agree. There's nothing there, but I do think the total could be a little bit high because the Bears still have those main guys on defense here. So I'm going to think a little bit more about that one, but no play from me either. Great number you had, of course, like I said before, at 9.5. Put that sucker on your wall and let's watch this thing come into fruition. Indianapolis Colts, another road favorite going into Jacksonville. Division game, 44.5 is a total. Colts are a 7-point favorite here. Now, I have the Colts at minus 4.75 here. All right. Jacksonville is probably one of my worst 3 teams in my power ratings here, but that is a lot of points, and I still had to give Jacksonville a little bit of home field advantage, and I probably shouldn't. It's probably like the worst home field to ever give anything to, but it's a division game, and I will say that Jacksonville is 5-0 against the spread, and I think they're 5-0 straight up. Their last 5 home games against the Colts. It blew my mind. Just saw that. So I'm going to lean to Jacksonville here with that fat number. And also because Phillip Rivers doesn't always impress me. He's kind of up and down. He's kind of that fourth quarter guy that's losing and comes back and either wins or loses, So what are your thoughts?
Well, before you threw that stat out there, which is a pretty darn good one, I'm going to have to remember that we're going to use that week 1 in our column. Before you said that, I was about to say this is going to be our first bottle of wine or beer at a Vegas casino bet because I'm on the other side of it. I think Jacksonville, worst team in the league, other than Washington. I don't think it's close. And Indy is actually, to me, the one dark horse candidate I see to win the AFC outside of the Ravens and Chiefs being the favorites. I think, nobody's a Phillip Rivers fan. Phillip Rivers has accomplished just as much as you and I have in terms of, winning in the NFL and championships.
Right.
But I think the Colts were already a solid team, solid organization, solid coaching staff. You're adding, an all-pro quarterback. Call it what it is. He is a guy who's going to borderline be Hall of Famer, depending on what you value, rings over stats. Dan Marino fans, you know where I land. But Phillip Rivers is, to me, what that team needed. Their defense was largely improved last year, and I think the Colts, unlike last year where it was a toss-up in that division, I think the Colts run away with that division this year, get one of those probably 3 or 4 spots in there. Obviously, it's different now without the top 2 getting a bye, and wouldn't be surprised to see the Colts in the AFC Championship game. As this pertains to this matchup, taking your wonderful stat aside that would back me off of it, I think they're just that much better than the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Jags are a team that could easily go 1-15 this year and be the Bengals of last year. And when we look at the Jags in week 7 and they're 0-6, you'd be like, oh, why did I take the points versus the Colts? I would lay the points here. I think if you can get it at 7, 6.5, that's where I would go. It wouldn't be the top game on my board, but I do think early on I would lean for the Colts.
All right, well, there you go. I lean to Jacksonville. You lean to the Colts. Green Bay versus Minnesota. Minnesota -3 here. Total is 46. Green Bay, I have them more of a pick 'em here, man. I think Green Bay's better than the Vikings. Not a huge. I think the total's probably where it should be. Minnesota lost a ton of defense. I'm going to put a lean on Green Bay here and see what you have to say.
They did lose a lot on defense. They also lost, one of their coordinators to go to Cleveland and Stefanowski. And these two teams, to me, are I would love to see them play 16 times a year. I love when the Vikings play the Packers. It's just one of my favorite matchups every single year. But 3 is a lot there with Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay. And, that's a team that I think – both the number, that's your division right there. Green Bay, Minnesota, whoever wins the series is going to win the division. They'll both be in the playoffs. I do think 3 is at the limit to what I would give if I was taking the Vikings, but I do side with you. I would take Green Bay plus the 3. Early divisional game, talent is probably the same, if not a little bit towards Green Bay's side. Coaching around the same. I think that Green Bay, like everybody does every year, could easily win the Super Bowl, and then something goes wrong, and Aaron Rodgers gets mad at the coaching staff. They fire a coach. That's what happens in Green Bay. But they have all the talent in the world. I know they didn't draft the wide receivers people wanted them to draft, but if you can get Rodgers some wide receivers in there, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, and they still got Adams there, so yep.
They do.
So if you like Green Bay, grab the 3 because that thing's already starting to come down. Chargers -3 at Cincinnati, road favorite. And it's Cincinnati, man. New quarterback with Joe Burrow, new coach. I actually have this closer to a pick 'em too. Cincinnati -0.25, but yuck, man. It's hard for me to bet Cincinnati. One thing they didn't do, in my opinion, enough was fix their offensive line. And one thing I don't think they did quite enough was fix their defense. So, Chargers are going to have a very good defense. They had a ton of guys injured last year. They just paid Bosa. Ingram's looking great, So, Joe Burrow coming right out, green as hell. No preseason games, man. I lean to the Bengals. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you on this one, and you have to go outside of what people remember from last year with the Chargers being, pretty good, borderline playoff team, and the Bengals being the worst team in the league. They didn't fix all of their problems. They got the hometown guy. If you are going to have any sort of, well, what does week 1 mean, talking about ring ceremonies and banners and home field and all of that being what it is, having a hometown guy be the savior of the franchise, week 1 versus an average team who lost their quarterback, and you have a brand new team ready to go, I do side with the 3 points there. And there's also some statistics out there about teams that were so bad the year before, not only record-wise and ATS-wise, but that are getting points at home week 1. I will have all of that in our preseason, in our week 1 articles. But I would lean Cincinnati here. Not that I'm a huge fan of taking Cincinnati home dog plays, but we're talking about the Chargers here without Phillip Rivers, without Melvin Gordon. they're not the same Chargers as they've been in the past, and the Bengals are going to be improved. I'm not saying Joe Burrow is going to go win, MVP and they're going to win 10 games, but it's week 1. It's his debut, assuming he's behind center, and I think they have a bunch to play for there, and I think they win that one.
All right, well, there you go. I'm glad we side with that. I didn't make a play yet, but I'll be looking more at it. Arizona at San Francisco. San Fran is about a 7-point favorite. I have the number 8.5. It's not enough for me. 46.5 is a total. I lean under, but San Fran actually surprised me. Their defense would stuff people, and they scored a lot of points last year, so they did go over some of those games because of it. Here's the thing about AZ. They played Frisco really tough last year. The first, they're both their times. And I think there was one weird play where he threw the ball back, right? And I think they got points off it and picked it up. And was it in the end zone? It was one of those.
It was the last play of the game, similar to it was one of the 2 biggest bad beats of the
year. I was in. You know what? I wasn't on the bad beat because I got it early, but I was close. So
yeah, it was between the Redskins Eagles one I mentioned earlier and the Cardinals Niners one. I believe it was a kickoff. The Cardinals closed within like 2 points or 3 or whatever it was. They had the kickoff, and it was fumble, went the other way. And I think it was either kickoff or a punt, and it wound up being a bad beat. But you're 100% correct. Not only have the Cardinals played the Niners close twice last year, but they played them close twice the year before. So in the last 4 meetings, if you take away the bad beat at the end, the Cardinals covered all 4 of them, which is why I think 7 is way too much. Plus, I think the Cardinals are an improved team this year. Again, they're not going to necessarily make the playoffs, but Kyler Murray, year 2, DeAndre Hopkins, I think you have a team that can make some waves. And to me, there's no doubt what the best division in football is the NFC West, as you have Seattle, San Francisco, an improved Arizona team. And, we haven't talked about the Rams yet, but they're 2 years away from being in the Super Bowl. So I like the 7 here, but I'm always someone who takes the Cardinals plus the points versus the 49ers every single time. So I'm just going to keep doing it.
There you go, man. You got into something here. Is it a play or a lean?
It's a play for me. I would take the Cardinals week 1 for sure. It would be one of my top games that I would take if I was betting them all today. I just think you're getting too much with an offense that I think is going to be better in year 2, and they showed some promise last year, both times versus San Francisco. I was somebody, and it worked against me, but I was someone who faded the Niners a lot last year, a team that was, a play away from winning the Super Bowl. They didn't cover as much as people think they did, and the games were a lot of one-score games, and there is regression to the means with winning those one-score games. Niners still could very easily win that division, but I don't think they're a 10-11 win team that makes the Super Bowl again. I'm not a huge Jimmy G fan. I think this division becomes a lot closer, and you can see someone winning it at 10 wins, unlike having 2 13-win teams last year. I think you have a scenario where Seattle might win 10 or 11, San Francisco wins 9 or 10. You have the Rams and the Cardinals sitting at 7 or 8 wins, and it's very close.
All right. Well, I like it. I do like the Arizona's a dark horse in that division myself. So next 4 games, let's just kind of do bam, 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 1 minute per game. Tampa Bay at New Orleans. New Orleans is minus 4 points. Totals 49.5. I have New Orleans by 6.5 here. So it would be a play according to numbers, but I'm not playing it. I don't want to fade Tom Brady off the start. I don't. He's excited. Would I do strongly lean in? This is uncommon too. It's 49.5. I lean the over in this game. What are your thoughts?
I think you're getting value here with the Saints. This game opened 5.5, 6. It was even talked about at 6.5 in some places. It's the Tom Brady effect. Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, the Bucks, new team. They're going to be the Super Bowl champs. The Saints are the best team in the NFC, and they've been the best team in the NFC. They've had a lot of bad breaks in the playoffs. I think laying 4 versus, yes, it's Tom Brady. I have no problem fading Tom Brady, but it's not Tom Brady in New England. It's Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. I like your over. 2 really good offenses, an offense that was already good that just added Tom Brady. I'm not sure the pieces are there together, despite whatever Tom does in the park and practice when he shouldn't be. They don't have a lot of time to put this together. It's a brand new offense. It's a brand new quarterback in there. Saints are a better team, and only 4 to me this is a play for me as well.
All right, my man. There you go. Another play. Dallas Cowboys minus 2.5 at the L.A. Rams, a road favorite here. I have the number Dallas minus 1.25, so not a huge thing here. I'm a little bit lower than the spread, but I still lean to Dallas. I just don't like the Rams rushing defense, and that's what Dallas does well. So I'm going to lean to Dallas right here. No opinion on the total. So what are your thoughts?
It's a pass for me. I mean, these are two teams that are Dallas is a little bit more talented. They have obviously the offense coming back. You mentioned the Rams rush defense. The Rams have to be better than they were last year. They took a step back from losing in the Super Bowl. This is a game where I wouldn't be surprised if either team won or either team covered. I think the total is a little high at 50 because the defenses are better than allowing 50 points. There's really no home field advantage when it comes to Los Angeles, although it is a new stadium compared to what they, played in before. But Dallas is Dallas. They travel well. They have home. No one's going. I say travel well, meaning there's going to be a crowd there, but they're used to playing in other people's stadium and it not being effective. No crowd doesn't really matter. It's a toss-up to me, so stay away. I would probably have it around where it is.
All right, two left. We have Pittsburgh -3.5, road favorite at New York Giants here. Totals at 46.5. I actually have the Giants here, more of a pick 'em. I really do. And I think there's a lot of people buying into the Steelers this year because Big Ben's coming back. My thing is that Big Ben could come out really rusty. He's not used to these guys that he's throwing to. Maybe a little bit Juju Smith-Schuster, but not really the other guys. He's coming in again, and I don't know if his timing's going to be there. Yes, it is in practice, but we know practice isn't the real game speed. The Giants fixed some things. They picked up some people on defense. They picked up a couple cornerbacks. I think they're going to want to make a statement at home a little bit here. 3.5 is too much for me. I think this is a play. I'm going to take a star on the New York Giants just for one play, but I'm actually liking the under here because Pittsburgh has a top 3 defense. I like the under more. I like under 46.5 for 2 stars. Thoughts?
I do agree with you on the under, and in terms of the spread itself, the hook bothers me. Just by purely looking at it, the Steelers should be a team that makes the playoffs. I saw enough of the Giants in person last year to know that they're not that necessarily a good team. But you do have, Daniel Jones is the unequivocal starter. There's no who's going to be the starter. How's Eli going to take it? Crap that goes on there. It's Daniel Jones is what it is. You got one of the best running backs in the game back there. I still don't think the Giants are where they need to be yet. It's going to be a pass for me because I think that hook bothers me. If the line comes down in the 2.5, 3 range, I would jump on the Steelers. Could potentially buy it. You're losing some value if you're, $1.25, $1.30. But let's see where the money comes in later. Pittsburgh is kind of a public team, so I don't expect it to move much down. So it's not probably one I would play. Giants, Monday night, it's probably not where I want to, depending on what I do on Sunday, probably not one where I want to chase. It's a pass, but I could see why people would be on the Giants. They will be better. You don't know what's going to happen with the Steelers, but if I had to tell you it was week 17, I would say the Steelers are more likely to be there than the Giants.
Oh, for sure. 100% agree with that. Steelers or Giants are supposedly up and coming. Still not sure in the quarterback yet. He showed some good signs last year, but I'm not sold yet either on Daniel Jones. Last game, Tennessee versus Denver Broncos. Denver -1. Total is 41.5. Tennessee. I have Tennessee by 2.25 points. So I know it's between the threes for me. So it's just a lean to Tennessee. But to be honest with you, I mean, Tennessee, they showed me a lot last year. I like what Vrabel's doing. I was surprised how good he actually was. Denver has Drew Lock. He actually underperformed. The reason a lot of his pass yards hit was because of yards after the catch. Derrick Henry really opens up the pass for Tennessee, and Tannehill did impress me. I do agree with you that the Colts probably have a better chance to win the division here, but coming into Denver here, the total of this game is 41.5. This is close to a pick 'em. I'm going to lean Tennessee. Thoughts?
I agree with you. I would lean Tennessee here. I'm not a huge believer in Drew Lock in Denver. Tennessee probably doesn't do what they did last year, but there might be some consistency with Tannehill and Henry back for another season. This line sort of surprised me. I would not have put Denver as the favorite, especially without home field advantage. But home field wise, no crowd. It is a mile high. That does have a factor for players who aren't used to it. Tennessee is used to it. Derrick Henry is a workhorse. Tennessee is a team that can contend, as we've seen last year. Don't think they're as good as they finished last year, but I do think they would go into Denver and win that week 1 game. They got a coach who does the Patriot things right, and he can get them ready for week 1 in Denver. And I just don't think the Broncos are where people think the Broncos should be yet. They're still probably a 5 or 6 win team and 1 year away from contending, depending on if Drew Lock grows. Tennessee's already been there. They've made the playoffs, made the AFC Championship game. I think they win that game, and it's a team that will contend with the Colts, but I do see the Colts winning the division.
All right, man. Well, good job on that one, and fantastic job breaking these games down, man. We always go a little bit long, but that's good. The listeners do love details, so thank you very much for all of that, David. Any final thoughts on week 1, man?
I just hope it happens. That's really my only thought there is we just hope they play stadiums, crowds, whatever the rules are. I just, obviously we want everybody to be safe.
All right.
Right. But I just hope we can see some football.
Yeah, I hope everyone's safe as well. Make sure you guys, don't make any stupid mistakes there. Go on there, follow the rules. If you have to wear a mask, definitely wear a mask, and make sure that your family's safe as well. That's the most important thing. But hopefully the players pay attention here, are smart about things, and make this a good season for the rest of us. David, I can't thank you enough for coming on, man. You did such a fantastic job breaking down these games. I'm looking forward to our conversations a little bit, and during the year about the old Chicago Bears. So we'll talk about that. And make sure you guys check out David's articles on ESPN.com. David, how often do you post them?
Daily. With the NFL season coming up, we'll have something almost every single day, NFL or college football related, assuming there's college football as well. But ESPN.com/chalk has. And you can also find it in the app under the chalk category. We'll have football, basketball. We have basketball content today, and we have our weekly golf picks that I participate in, as well as Doug Kazarian, Chris the Bear Felica, and Anita Marks. That's up there for the Northern Trust out there today as well.
Make sure you check out David at ESPN.com. Great information right there. All right. For the last little segment here, I promised a UFC play for this weekend. I looked at the card. Didn't dive super deep, but I am not in love with it. But I think I did find some value here. We have a fight. I believe it's in the main card. It's the third to the last. Marcin Prachnio, and I believe I said that right, versus Mike Rodriguez. Marcin is a plus 195, big dog against Mike Rodriguez. And I looked at this fight, and I kind of agree with that. What I do like, though, is looking at these fighters. Marcin, he has 13 wins, 4 losses. 10 of his wins are KOs, 1 submission, 2 decisions. His losses, 3 of them KOs, 1 decision. If you look at his past fights, last one over at the UFC, it was first round, lost by TKO. The fight before that, UFC, first round, lost by KO to Sam Alvey. And then before that was all in different organizations. Most of the time, his fights were over in the first round. Once in a while, he'll make a decision when the fighter's not that good. Okay. Looking at Mike Rodriguez. Mike Rodriguez is 10-4, age 31. 8 KOs out of his 10 wins, 2 submissions. His losses was KO, submission, and 2 decisions here, okay? So if you look at his fights, most of his were also over in the first round. Actually, a heck of a lot of them were over in the first round here. Both of these guys are punchers, okay? The average fight time for Mike Rodriguez is 5 minutes and 19 seconds. Well, we all know that the rounds are 5 minutes long. The average fight time for Marcin Prachnio is 6 minutes and 29 seconds. So what you're looking at here is an under, and I think this under is going to hit, and it's at minus 120, under 1.5 rounds. I'm going to make this a 2-star premium share played. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning on. I hope you guys have a great weekend of sports betting. Make sure you get to Vegas, sign up with Kelly, get in those contests. Everybody, go get some winners.